Here's 10 times that Killua went way too far in Hunter x Hunter. Sponsored by Squarespace, the platform that provides you with the tools to create your own custom websites and online stores to engage with your audience on your terms. But more about them later, because we need to see this preteen go overboard. And it really doesn't take too long for him to start doing this. We're talking chapter 14, and here's the situation. An old man challenges two preteens to grab his ball singular. If it was plural, we'd have a problem, but it isn't, so we don't. And the idea is that if either Gon or Killua were to manage to take the ball from Netero, then he will issue them their hunter licenses right then and there. But at a certain stage, Killua realizes that Netero is being a bit of a troll, and he is so far beyond the two of them that there's no chance they could ever take the ball, even if they both relentlessly attacked him for a year straight. So Killua decides to quit, which is a fairly reasonable course of action upon discovering that your endeavor is impossible. However, in this moment, Killua is anything but reasonable. He's incredibly frustrated at his lack of ball grabbing, and it's at this moment that he bumps into candidates 390 and 391, and Killua proceeds to murder both of them on the spot, which in the manga is particularly brutal. You can see him having decapitated one of them and sliced directly through the head of the other. Now, in Killua's defense, there is no defense. He went way too far here. All the candidate said was, "Ick, he's all sweaty," and "Hey kid, where are your manners?" And one of them does go to grab Killua, which I suppose is threatening, but it was also Killua who purposely took off his shirt for some reason and then decided to walk straight into the candidates with the sweat equivalent of 10 covering his body. And this was considered such an overreaction that the event was heavily censored in both the 2011 and 1999 anime versions. Although the 1999 one is especially weird because it gets integrated with the whole Anita plotline, who was non-canonically exam candidate 111 and doesn't like them Zoldycks because they murdered her spice merchant father. But it only takes another 7 chapters for Killua to go too far once more. After Leorio loses his match in Trick Tower because he wanted to see a naked lady, the fate of our entire group is placed on the slender yet deadly shoulders of Killua. His opponent, Yones the Dissector, a man sentenced to 948 years in prison and labeled as the single worst mass murderer in Zaban City. His body count totaled 146 victims across the entire spectrum of age, race, and gender, so you could say that Yones believed in diversity above all. But the thing is, as horrific as all of that sounds, when we're talking about the Zoldycks, 146 victims, what is that? That's like their body count before preschool. So Killua responds quite maturely and assassinately by immediately ripping out Jonas' heart. And honestly, it's definitely not one of those occasions where you feel sad for Killua's victim. However, it's the face that Killua makes as Jonas is begging for his heart that tells me that Killua might have gone a step too far here, because he is relishing in this moment, letting Yones live just long enough to give him the despair of seeing his heart destroyed. And I should say it's not just Killua who has some red flags happening here. In the 1999 anime, after Killua removes the heart, we cut to a reaction shot of Gon just staring at Killua in complete glee, like a psychopath discovering a fellow psychopath to go and have fun with. That's not even the only heart that Killua has destroyed in Hunter x Hunter though. After a stern talking to / bout of psychological abuse from his brother Illumi in the final phase of the Hunter exam, Killua was feeling a little bit miffed. And we all remember what happened last time Killua got frustrated during the ball incident. That's right, he killed 2 dudes. And look, on this occasion, Killua did temper his bloodlust and killed only 1 dude, the very unfortunate Bedoro. And fun fact, immediately after this happens in the Hunter x Hunter volumes, Togashi decides to give readers a fun activity to do by providing a dress-up Gon template. Although in a weird choice, the 1999 anime tries to make things a little bit less severe by saying that Bedoro was rushed to hospital, but it was too late to save him. But the manga in the 2011 version know what's up. There was no chance he was ever being saved. It was too late to save him the very moment that Killua plunged his hand straight through his chest and destroyed his heart. That's when it was too late. Now in this case, there is some argument to be made about how much of this was Killua and how much of this was Illumi's influence, but I do think that a lot of people try to retrospectively excuse Killua from this action by handing all of the blame to Illumi. But at this point, we've already seen Killua murder for much less. The way I read it is that Killua knew he wouldn't be able to pass the exam with Illumi there, and so he decided to forfeit in the way that would best help his friends pass the exam, and Bedoro happened to be the very unfortunate slab of meat that stood opposite Leorio. But not all Killua exaggeration has to do with killing. One of my favorite character quirks in all of Hunter x Hunter is Killua's very crippling gambling addiction, but there is definitely a case where Killua went too far by betting his own life during partner in Greed Island. He did this using the card Risky Dice, a 20-sided die with 19 stars and 1 skull, and when a user rolls the die, if it lands on a star, then excellent, their luck increases. However, if it lands on the skull, then it significantly decreases their luck to such an extent that the user often dies. Very, very unlucky. So every time you roll Risky Dice, you have a 1 in 20 chance of dying. Now, in Killua's defense, this was in order to win a Rainbow Diamond card, which as far as we know can only be attained at the slot machines in Dory City. So Killua saw this opportunity, immediately bet his life, and won first go. And look, if that's where all of this stopped, then this incident wouldn't be in this video. But Killua then got a bit of a gambler's high and proceeded to keep using Risky Dice again and again for an unknown amount of times, winning jackpot after jackpot until Bisky was forced to knock Killua out for his own safety. If Bisky hadn't done that, I think that Killua probably just would have kept going and going until he eventually rolled a skull and died. And what's really interesting to think about is that this is an instance where Illumi's needle didn't activate despite Killua being in very real danger of death. But I guess this could be because Killua did not perceive himself as being in any danger, which makes it all the more terrifying that he did this. He was risking his life, but he fully believed that he could not lose. Staying on track with the quirky Killua, again, not every extra moment results in a corpse. Sometimes it results in bodies, but bodies that are still breathing, and also bodies that didn't need to necessarily end up on the floor. And by this, I'm referring to chapter 148, where Killua briefly leaves Greed Island to participate in that year's Hunter exam. Here, Killua runs into a bit of an old buddy named Zepil. He's the one who helped Gon and Killua navigate the surprisingly detailed world of auctions during York New City. Now look, fair enough, Killua is on the clock. He can't afford to waste too much time getting his license because there's all the stuff on Greed Island to do. So what he does is knock out every single candidate, including Zepil, and thus becomes the only one to pass the Hunter exam that year. But he didn't just do this for the sake of time. In fact, before knocking Zepil out, Killua even taunts him by saying, "I'll be the only one to pass this year." I added the haha, but you get it. He didn't need to knock out Zepil. He could have gone for everyone else, and I think there were over 1,000 candidates there. He could have just taken all of them out and leave his good friend Zepil to, move on and get his hunter's license as well. But no, Killua is a very greedy boy and decided to defecate all over Zepil's hopes and dreams. Now, speaking of hopes and dreams, the sponsor of this video, Squarespace, actually gave me the ability to make one of my dreams come true, which was to start a channel merch store without repeatedly slamming my head into the wall due to technological illiteracy. Through Squarespace, you can sell anything through an exceptionally easy to set up online store, be it physical, digital, or service products. In my case, I sell physical shirts, and I promise you that we'll get some New World Review ones soon. But Squarespace offers an incredible amount of ready-to-go website templates that are customizable to your heart's content through the Fluid Engine, a next-generation website design system to further unlock and cultivate your creativity. So you can and should check out Squarespace through my link in the description, because doing so will save you 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And just genuinely, thank you so much again to Squarespace. It's sponsors like Squarespace that make producing regular fictional hunter content possible. So please do check them out, but for now it's back to you, me. Now going back to Savage Killua, probably my favorite Savage Killua moment of all time is also on Greed Island, where Killua grabbed a bottle of alcohol and created a spark in order to set why is this hard? It should not be hard. And created a spark to set his head on fire. We're just gonna go with the last one. It's such a brilliantly brutal conclusion to come to. The whole idea was that they needed to force out of the ring, but Killua could have done that much more simply. But no, our boy, again, he had to be that little bit extra. And with this, we also see the return of Killua's sinister face. By this time, he's well on his journey to being a good boy, but that twisted appreciation for unique kinds of pain is still well and truly present. And I also love that this chapter features the sinister face from the Hunter exam, because in the volume version, Togashi draws Jonas at the end of the chapter, bringing everything all nice and full circle. Killua doesn't relax the brutality during the Chimera Ant arc either. Although his life is significantly more in danger, he still finds a way to go over the top. For example, in his fight against Mosquito. And this is one of those rare moments where I think the anime actually made it much worse than the manga. In the manga, Killua activates an assassin technique called Serpent Work and takes off Mosquito's forearm in a defensive position. This isn't particularly overboard. In fact, I would say that it's thoroughly bored. However, in the 2011 anime, we expand on this a bit. The attack here is translated as Snake Awakens, and instead of taking a single forearm, Killua keeps pursuing Mosquito and ripping off a second limb as well, and seemingly content with dissecting piece after piece until there are ever so many pieces on the floor, but none of them are particularly big or threatening pieces. It's another one of those Killua things where, yeah, there was probably a more direct and efficient way of dealing with Mosquito. A lot of the time, Killua ends conflicts in one shot, usually a decapitation decapitation. But here, Killua was content to take his sweet time and just slowly dismantle someone. Meanwhile, against Yuppie, Killua also went a bit too far, but much like in his gambling instance, this was very much personally detrimental rather than detrimental to Yuppie. So to set this up, Killua had a, how shall we say, not so good chat with Gon. This was definitely the low point of their friendship, and as we know, when Killua is upset, something tends to die. And so when Killua came into contact with Yuppie, he said, "I'm a little ticked off right now, so I'm just gonna take it out on you," and then proceeded to smack the crap out of Yuppie, who was completely powerless to stop Killua due to how fast he was moving. But Killua doesn't cause any real damage either. It really is like Killua just hitting a punching bag. He's not really doing any damage to the bag itself, but the bag is also powerless to stop him doing all the punching. No one ever thinks about the feelings of the punching bags, and then maybe you should. But Killua gets so carried away that Godspeed wears off and leaves him in a very compromised position where, if not for Meliaron, Killua would once again be dead. Now, personal question, how many of you have a strained relationship with your parents? In some particularly extreme cases, a few of you may even have wished that your parents were dead, and that would give you something in common with Killua because that's exactly what he did during the election arc. He issued a wish to Nanika to kill his mother. As a condition, that is. The condition was that if they hadn't left the compound in 30 minutes, then Kikyo would be killed. So you could say that Killua never intended for the death to happen, it was all some elaborate bluff. But he did still genuinely put his mother's life at risk, and also there's a sinister reason why he chose her. Killua has a not so great relationship with Kikyo, and even stabbed her in the face that one time, which is why she was wearing bandages when we were first introduced to her. But really, Killua could have chosen anyone in the Zoldyck family. In fact, he could have chosen everyone in the family. There was no need to discriminate, but no, Killua, he wanted to. Instead, what he did was he singled out his mother's life to be used as the betting chip for his gambit. But going forward, now we have a slight trigger warning for self-harm. Because we've talked about Killua's reckless disregard for his own life enough in this video, and then we're going to do it again, because this is the ultimate instance of that. It comes from the Hunter x Hunter film Phantom Rouge, where Killua genuinely attempts to commit suicide by plonking himself on the tracks and almost allowing himself to get hit by a train. He does this because he feels ashamed at failing to protect Gon, and he's also saved by Gon, who manages to smell where Killua has gone. But it's a really dark moment, and it might seem weird and out of place, and especially in this non-canon film. However, it does actually have some in-series basis, although it's something that gets lost a bit in translation. In chapter 286, there's a section where Meliaron is talking to Killua about what they're going to do next, and Killua says, "I already know that Gon won't budge an inch. At worst, I'll go down in flames with him, I guess." And that, well, it pretty severely undersells what's actually happening here. The specific term Killua uses in Japanese is shinju, meaning double suicide or lover suicide made via a pact. So Killua is prepared to follow Gon down whatever destructive path he chooses. It's not necessarily a pact that Gon and Killua have made together, it's more of a parasitic pact that Killua has made, attaching himself to Gon. Going down in flames really doesn't give you the same impression. In fact, it makes it sound kind of cool. But the unfortunate thing is that there just isn't a good English translation for this statement. And that's 10 times that Killua went too far in Hunter x Hunter.